It just happened last weekend, and I still can't quite wrap my head around it. You know how your friends sometimes try to set you up on blind dates, right? Well, mine had been at it for months. Every time we hung out, they'd bring it up, how I should give it a shot, how perfect they thought the girl would be for me. And every time, I'd say no. Honestly, I thought blind dates were awkward, forced, just not my thing. But Marcus, my best friend, wouldn't drop it. He'd keep going on about this girl, Sophie, saying we had so much in common. He was sure we'd hit it off, and that I was being an idiot for not just saying yes. Finally, I agreed. Not because I thought it was a good idea, but just to shut him up. I figured he'd forget about it, like all the other times. But no. Friday afternoon, I got a text from Marcus. Date set for Sunday, 3 p.m., Lakeview Coffee in Denver. Sophie's waiting for you. I actually laughed out loud. I thought he was joking. I texted back, asking if this was another prank. He swore it wasn't, said Sophie was really expecting me, and that I needed to be there. I told him fine, but if this turned out to be another joke, he owed me beer for a month. Saturday came and went. No text from Marcus, nothing. I started thinking maybe I dodged a bullet. But sure enough, Sunday morning, I get the reminder on my phone. 2:30 p.m., time to go. I was in my garage, elbows deep in grease, working on my old Chevy pickup that I'd been restoring for the past year. But at that moment, it hit me. I had an actual date in a few hours. The thought of backing out crossed my mind, but I knew Marcus would never let me live it down. So I cleaned up, changed into a clean shirt, and reluctantly drove to the coffee shop. Lakeview Coffee was on the edge of the lake, with big windows and wooden tables. It was bustling for a Sunday afternoon. Families, couples, the usual. I ordered a black coffee and found a table by the window so I could keep an eye on the door, waiting for this whole thing to either get awkward or reveal itself as a joke. 3 p.m. came and went. No text, no call. I was getting ready to leave when the door swung open. And there she was. Sophie, I kid you not. Everything around me seemed to freeze. She had long, dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, wearing a flowy sundress, light blue with little white flowers on it. The way she moved, the calm confidence she had, it was like she was completely comfortable in her own skin. And when she looked around and her eyes landed on me, I swear, my heart skipped a beat. She smiled, this soft, genuine smile, not over the top, just real. And something about it made my chest tighten in a way I wasn't prepared for. She walked straight over to my table, and I stood up so fast I almost knocked over my coffee. "Are you Jake?" she asked, her voice warm with just a hint of a rasp. I nodded like an idiot, barely able to speak. Yeah, I'm Jake." She laughed, a soft, genuine laugh. "I'm Sophie," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Guess we're both victims of the same setup. Her voice felt like a warm blanket, and I couldn't help but smile at how easy it was to talk to her. I leaned forward. Looks like our friends really went all out this time. Quote, "We started talking, and it was like the last few months of my life had led to this very moment. It didn't feel forced at all, like so many blind dates do." Sophie told me her friend Rachel had been trying to set her up for weeks. She thought it was a joke at first, but when Rachel sent her my picture and the address of the coffee shop, she figured she had to show up. I asked her what she did for work. "I'm a vet tech at a clinic on the south side of Denver," she said, and I could see her whole face light up as she talked about it. "I love animals. It's honestly the best job." I told her I worked as a mechanic, restoring old cars. She perked up. "Old cars, huh? That sounds interesting. What are you working on right now?" I told her about the Chevy I was restoring, and to my surprise, she didn't zone out. She asked me questions, like actual, real questions, about the engine, the paint color, the details that most people wouldn't care about. Her interest was so real, and that made me like her even more. We talked for hours, and before we knew it, the sun outside was starting to set, and the coffee shop was quieter. We both looked at our phones at the same time and realized that we'd been talking for nearly 3 hours. "Wow, time flew by," Sophie said, her eyes wide with surprise. "Yeah, it really did." I agreed, feeling the same way. We stood up, and as we walked out of the shop, the cool air hit my face. We stopped in the parking lot, not quite knowing how to end the afternoon. Sophie looked up at me and said, "I had a really good time." "I did too," I said. "Do you want to do this again sometime?" She smiled, her eyes soft and sincere. "I'd like that." We exchanged numbers, and just as I was about to walk away, she pulled me into a quick hug. It felt good, so good. The kind of hug that leaves you wanting more. As she drove away, I stood there, still processing everything that had just happened. I couldn't believe it. I'd actually enjoyed a blind date. And not just that, it felt real, like something more could happen. I called Marcus as soon as I got in my truck. He picked up laughing, already expecting some kind of update. "Well," he asked, grinning through the phone, "how was it?" Quote, I couldn't help but laugh, shaking my head. "You were right. I owe you more than a month of beer." That night, as I sat on the couch in my apartment, I couldn't stop thinking about Sophie. About the way she smiled, the way she listened to me like I actually mattered. It was like a weight had been lifted off my chest. And I couldn't wait to see her again. The week that followed felt like it was dragging. It was like time had slowed down, and every minute without Sophie felt like an hour. I couldn't stop thinking about her. Her smile, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her work, the way she listened to me with such genuine curiosity. I found myself checking my phone every few minutes, hoping for another text from her. We'd exchanged a few texts after the coffee date, but nothing too heavy. It was all light stuff, just little things about our days. She'd send me pictures of the animals she worked with at the clinic, and I'd send her updates on the Chevy. The connection between us was easy, like we'd known each other forever, even though we'd only spent a few hours together. By Thursday, I was already looking forward to the weekend. She'd texted me earlier in the week to say she'd love to go hiking with me, and I was more than ready to get out of the city and spend some time with her. Saturday morning came, and I woke up early, too early for a Saturday. I couldn't sleep, so I started pacing around my apartment, trying to decide what to wear. I knew it was just a hike, but I couldn't help it. I wanted everything to be perfect. I changed clothes 3 times, each time thinking I was either trying too hard or not enough. By the time I finally decided on a simple t-shirt, jeans, and my worn-in boots, I was running late. I got to the trailhead 15 minutes earlier than the time we'd agreed on, and there she was, standing by her car, leaning against it with a backpack and hiking boots on. The moment I saw her, I felt that same tightness in my chest, the one that had hit me the first time we met. She smiled and waved when she saw me, and my heart did that thing again, like it was trying to jump into my throat. "Hey," she said, walking toward me. "You made it." "Wouldn't miss it," I said, trying to sound casual, but I could tell she could hear the nervousness in my voice. We started up the trail, side by side. The morning air was cool and crisp, the kind of air that made your lungs feel like they were filling up with something fresh. The path was quiet, with just the sounds of birds chirping and our boots crunching against the dirt. It felt peaceful, and I found myself relaxing. We talked about everything. Sophie told me how she came to Denver from Wyoming, how she'd always loved the wide open spaces but also loved the city life. It was clear she was torn between the two, but at the same time, I could see how much she had built for herself here. She was independent, driven, and still managed to hold on to the things that mattered to her. I talked about my own life, how I'd stayed in Denver after I lost my dad, and how I'd started working on cars because it felt like the one thing that really made sense. Sophie listened intently, asking questions and really wanting to know about what I did and why it mattered to me. It wasn't just idle chit-chat. It was real conversation, the kind that makes you feel like you've known someone for a lot longer than just a few hours. We hiked for about an hour before we reached a lookout point. The view was breathtaking, mountains stretching for miles, the trees below like a sea of green, and in the distance, the city of Denver. We sat on a rock, shared some water she'd brought, and kept talking. "You ever feel like you're in the wrong place?" Sophie asked, her voice soft. She looked out over the view. I nodded. "Yeah, sometimes. But then I think about all the things I've built here, and it feels right." She turned to face me, her eyes meeting mine. "I get that. I've had a hard time deciding where I belong. You know, I love Wyoming, but Denver's where I'm building my life. It's where I found my path. I could tell she was searching for something in my eyes, maybe validation or understanding, but I wasn't sure. I just nodded, letting her words sink in. She looked down at her hands for a moment before looking up at me again. I think it's about finding where you can grow, where you can be who you're meant to be. That hit me harder than I expected. Something about her words felt like they resonated deep down in my chest, like she was saying the things I needed to hear. We sat there for a while longer, just soaking in the silence and the view. But eventually the quiet became too heavy, and Sophie broke it by asking, "So what do you think of the whole blind date thing now?" I laughed, but it wasn't nervous laughter this time. I've got to admit, I'm surprised. I thought I'd hate it, but this doesn't feel like a blind date at all. It feels like two people who just happened to meet. She smiled, her eyes twinkling in the sunlight. "Yeah, me too." Quote. We hiked back down the trail, and when we got to the parking lot, I felt that same reluctance to say goodbye. I didn't want the day to end. "So what's next?" I asked, trying to hide the hope in my voice. She looked at me with a grin. "How about lunch? There's a diner nearby that I love." I didn't hesitate. "I'm in." The diner was one of those old-school places with checkered floors and booths that looked like they were straight out of a movie. We slid into a corner booth, and I felt completely at ease, like this was something I did all the time. We ordered burgers and fries, and Sophie told me how she used to come here when she was feeling homesick, back when she first moved to Denver. It made me feel like I was getting to know her in a way that went beyond the surface. "You miss Wyoming?" I asked as we dug into our food. "Sometimes," she said, looking down at her plate. "The quiet, the open spaces. But then I remember why I left and how much I've built here. It's where I'm meant to be." "I get that," I said, smiling. "I think I'm finally getting why you're here and why I'm still here." After lunch, we wandered around downtown, stopping at a bookstore, and I even started to appreciate poetry when she showed me her favorite section. We found a bench in a small park, and Sophie leaned back, closing her eyes as she soaked up the warmth of the sun. It was then that I realized something. This wasn't just a one-time thing. There was something real here, something that felt like it had potential. Sophie wasn't just some girl from a blind date. She was someone I could see in my life. I was about to say something when she opened her eyes and looked at me. "So what are we doing next?" I grinned. "I don't know, but I'm sure it'll be fun." We spent the rest of the afternoon walking around, enjoying each other's company, not rushing, just letting the moments unfold. Eventually, it was time for us to part ways. She had an early shift at the clinic the next morning, and I had work too. "I'll text you later," she said as we stood by her car. "Looking forward to it," I replied. We exchanged one last smile before she climbed into her car and drove off. As I watched her drive away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The next week went by slower than I could handle. Every day felt like it was dragging on, and all I could think about was Sophie. It wasn't just the date anymore. It was everything about her. The way she laughed, the way she looked at me when I spoke, like she was genuinely interested in everything I had to say. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt this way about someone. It wasn't just the initial spark of attraction. It was something deeper, something real. We texted and called a few times throughout the week. Nothing too serious, just little snippets of our days. She sent me a picture of a puppy she was taking care of at the clinic, and I sent her a video of me working on the Chevy. It was easy. It felt natural, like we'd been doing this forever. But it wasn't enough. I missed her. The texts and calls weren't enough to fill the gap she left in my life after our hikes, after our day at the diner. I was counting down the days until I could see her again. So when Saturday finally rolled around, I was practically vibrating with excitement. The night before, we'd made plans to meet at the trailhead for another hike. She had suggested it, and I'd agreed immediately. I woke up earlier than I needed to, trying to shake off the nerves. It was just another hike, but the way my stomach was twisting told me otherwise. It was like I was falling for her without even realizing it, and I couldn't stop it. I liked her more than I had any right to, like someone I had just met, and that thought both thrilled and terrified me. I drove to the trailhead, arriving a little early again. Sophie was already there, just like the last time, leaning against her car, waiting. She waved when she saw me, and I felt that same familiar rush in my chest. We started walking, and I could tell she was in a good mood. Her face was lit up with that same smile that always made me feel like everything in my life had just clicked into place. "So, what's the plan today?" I asked, falling into step beside her. "I was thinking we could hike to the top of that hill over there," she said, nodding toward the steep trail that led to a lookout point. "It's a bit of a climb, but I think you're up for it." I laughed, even though I wasn't sure if I was. The last time we hiked together, I definitely felt the burn in my legs, but I wasn't going to back out. Not now. Not when I was enjoying every minute of being around her. "Lead the way," I said, giving her a grin. We walked together, chatting about everything and nothing at all. The conversation flowed effortlessly. She talked about her love for the outdoors, how she loved hiking as a way to clear her mind after long days at work. I listened, my attention on her every word. She was passionate, and I could hear it in her voice. The way she spoke made everything sound more interesting, more important. As we reached the top of the hill, we sat on a large rock that overlooked the valley below. The view was stunning, with the mountains in the distance and the city far beneath us. It was one of those views that made you feel small in the best way. It reminded me of the simple things, the quiet moments that make life worth living. We sat there for a while, just soaking in the beauty of it all. The air was cool, and the silence between us felt comfortable, not awkward. She looked over at me, her eyes soft. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't gone on that blind date?" Sophie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I turned to face her, my heart suddenly pounding in my chest. It wasn't something I'd thought about until now. I'd just been focused on the present, on how right everything felt when I was with her. "Honestly," I said, "I can't imagine my life without it now. I'm glad we went." She smiled, but there was a hint of something in her eyes, something I couldn't quite read. She looked down at her hands for a moment, then back up at me. "You know, I've been thinking about that too," she said. "About how everything in my life has felt like it was leading me to this moment, to you." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't sure what to say, so I just stayed quiet, letting her continue. "I'm glad we met, Jake. I know it's only been a couple of weeks, but I don't know. I feel like there's something real here, something that could actually go somewhere." My chest tightened at her words. Part of me wanted to say something back, something that would let her know exactly how I felt. But I didn't want to rush it, didn't want to say anything that might scare her off. Instead, I took a deep breath and said, "I feel the same way, Sophie. I think there's something real here, too." She smiled, and the tension that had been hanging between us seemed to ease. For the first time, it felt like we were on the same page. Like this wasn't just some fling, some blind date that was doomed to fail. No, this was different. This felt like something worth holding on to. We spent the rest of the afternoon hiking around the area, talking about our lives, our pasts, our futures. It felt like we were getting to know each other on a deeper level. Sophie told me more about her childhood in Wyoming, how she missed the wide open spaces, but also loved the city life. She talked about her parents, her dog, and how they'd always been her rock, even when things got tough. I listened, and I shared more about myself, too. It wasn't just surface-level stuff. We both opened up, and it felt good. I could see a future with her. I didn't know exactly what that would look like, but for the first time in a long while, I was willing to find out. As we walked back down the trail to the parking lot, I realized something. This wasn't just another date. It wasn't just some random encounter. This was the beginning of something real, something worth fighting for. "I had an amazing time today," Sophie said, breaking the silence as we reached her car. "Me too," I said, my heart pounding in my chest. "I think we should do this again." She smiled and nodded. "I'd like that." As she got in her car and drove away, I stood there for a moment, watching her go. I knew it was still early, that we had a long road ahead of us. But I also knew that whatever came next, I was ready for it. Sophie was worth it. The next few days were a blur. Sophie and I had grown closer with each passing moment, and I was starting to realize just how much she meant to me already. We'd been texting nonstop, talking about everything under the sun. Our families, our work, the things we liked and disliked. and with each text, I found myself liking her more. The little things about her, like the way her voice softened when she talked about her family, or the way she'd smile when she asked about my day. It was like I could feel her warmth even through a screen. But there was something else lingering in the back of my mind, something I wasn't sure how to address yet. The way Sophie had looked at me on that hike, the way she had confessed that she felt something real between us, it made me nervous. Nervous because I felt it too, but I wasn't sure if I was ready for whatever was coming next. It wasn't that I didn't want it. I was just afraid of moving too fast and messing it all up. On Thursday night, Sophie called me. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice sounding a little distant. "Everything okay?" I asked, immediately worried. "Yeah, it's just—" I don't know how to say this. I could tell something was weighing on her. "You know you can tell me anything, right?" I said, trying to sound reassuring. She sighed. "It's just, with my dad still recovering, I feel like I'm stuck here. I feel like I need to be there for my family, especially for my mom. But I also know that I want something more than just being stuck in this place. I want more than just to be the person who fixes things for other people. I want to live my life too." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I could hear the frustration in her voice. She wasn't just talking about her dad's health. She was talking about her whole life, the way she felt like she was constantly balancing other people's needs with her own. And the truth was, I got it. I understood that feeling all too well. "I get it," I said quietly. "You don't have to explain. You're doing everything you can for them. And that's more than enough. But you also deserve to have something for yourself, something that's just yours." There was a long pause on the other end, and for a second, I thought maybe she was crying. Then she spoke again, her voice softer now. "I don't want to lose what we have. But I also don't know how long this is going to take. I don't know if I'll be able to keep coming back and forth between Denver and Wyoming. It feels like I'm being pulled in two different directions." I could hear the uncertainty in her voice, and it broke me a little. The last thing I wanted to do was be the reason she felt like she had to choose. I wanted to support her, but I didn't know how to make her feel like she didn't have to choose between us. "Sophie, listen to me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You don't have to figure it all out right now. I'm here, and I'll support you no matter what. If you need to be there for your family, I get that. But if you want to be here, with me, I'll be waiting. You don't have to choose between us." Quote. She was quiet for a long time, and I could feel the weight of the silence between us. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what I would do without you." That hit me hard. I'd never expected to hear her say that. In just a few weeks, I'd gone from thinking blind dates were the last thing I wanted to this, to caring about her more than I ever thought possible. "I'm not going anywhere, Sophie," I promised. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here." She didn't say anything for a moment, and then I heard her breathing change, like she was finally letting go of some of the tension that had been hanging in the air. "I think I need to come to terms with everything that's happening," she said quietly, "and I think I need some space to figure things out. I don't want to drag you into all my mess." "You're not dragging me into anything," I said firmly. "I'm with you, no matter what." The words hung in the air between us, and I meant every single one of them. I didn't know where this was going, or what the next few weeks would bring, but I knew I wasn't about to walk away from Sophie now. Not when we were just starting to build something that felt so right. "I'm glad you're here, Jake," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what I would do without you either." After a few more quiet moments, we said goodnight. I laid back on my bed, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts racing. Sophie was trying so hard to do everything for everyone else. And I wanted to help her, to make her realize that she didn't have to do it all on her own. But I couldn't fix everything for her. All I could do was be here, be someone she could count on. The next few days felt like they moved in slow motion. Sophie had to go back to Wyoming to be with her family, but we stayed in touch through texts and calls. Every time I heard her voice, I could hear the exhaustion in it, but I also heard the relief. Maybe she was starting to realize that she didn't have to carry everything on her own. Then, one night, after about a week of barely seeing each other, she called me again. This time, I could tell something had shifted in her. "I've been thinking about what you said," she said softly, "about not having to choose. I think I'm ready to come back." Hearing those words made my heart race. "Sophie, you don't have to decide anything right now." "I know," she interrupted, her voice steady now. "But I think I want to. I want to come back, and I want to make this work. With you. I want us to figure this out." A grin spread across my face, and for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe again. "Then come back," I said, my voice full of hope. "I'll be waiting." The next few days felt like a strange mixture of anticipation and relief. Sophie had decided to come back, and everything inside me was telling me that this was the right decision. It wasn't going to be easy, and there would be challenges ahead, but I felt certain that we could make it work. What we had wasn't something you let go of easily. It was real. And that was enough for me. Sophie texted me that she was flying back to Denver on a Friday afternoon, and I could hardly wait. I decided to pick her up from the airport. I wanted to be there. I wanted to be the one to greet her, to remind her that no matter what she had to go through, I'd be right there by her side. I arrived at the airport early, waiting by the baggage claim area, pacing a little. I kept checking my watch, feeling every minute stretch on longer than the last. I knew she'd been through so much, her dad's recovery, the weight of her family's expectations, and I couldn't help but wonder what she was thinking right now. Was she nervous about coming back to Denver? Was she nervous about us? Then, through the crowd of people, I saw her. Sophie. Her hair was down, and she was wearing a soft green jacket and dark jeans. She looked tired but beautiful, as if the weight of the past few weeks had been pulling at her. But now, she was walking toward me with a look of determination in her eyes. She spotted me almost instantly, and the smile that spread across her face made everything feel right again. I moved toward her, my heart in my throat. She walked faster, and before I knew it, I was pulling her into a tight hug, holding her like I never wanted to let go. "I missed you," I said into her hair, my voice thick with emotion. "I missed you too," she whispered, her arms tightening around me. More than I realized. I pulled back just enough to look at her, brushing a strand of hair out of her face. "So, what now?" She smiled at me, a real smile this time, one that reached her eyes. Now I'm here. I'm ready to be here. With you." Those words sent a wave of relief washing over me. I'd never been more sure of anything in my life. We grabbed her bags and made our way to the car, the entire drive feeling surreal. It was like we were starting over, but it didn't feel like starting over. It felt like picking up right where we'd left off, like nothing had ever pulled us apart in the first place. We didn't talk about the past week much. Instead, we just talked about small things, what we were going to have for dinner, funny stories from our friends, and how badly she wanted to see Copper, her golden retriever mix, again. When we got back to her apartment, Copper was waiting by the door. The moment Sophie stepped inside, the dog practically knocked her over with excitement. I couldn't help but laugh as she hugged him, and for a moment, I felt like everything was right in the world again. "You missed me, didn't you, buddy?" She laughed as Copper practically smothered her with affection. "You two make quite the pair," I said, watching them. Sophie looked up at me, her face soft and content. "Yeah, we do." We spent the rest of the evening getting her settled back into her apartment. I helped her unpack some of the things she'd brought back from Wyoming. We shared a quiet dinner of takeout pizza, and as we sat on the couch, the conversation turned to us. "I've been thinking a lot," she said, her voice serious now, "about what we want, where we're going. I know I've been all over the place lately, but I think I'm ready to focus on us now, on what we have. And I want you to know that I'm here. I'm really here." Her words struck me like a wave. She wasn't just talking about her return to Denver. She was talking about the future, our future. "I'm glad you're here, Sophie," I said, my voice steady but full of feeling. "I've never been more sure of anything. I want to be with you, whatever that looks like, wherever that takes us." Sophie reached for my hand, her fingers warm against mine. She squeezed it gently, as if reassuring me that we were on the same page. "We'll figure it out, Jake, together. No more distance, no more wondering." I leaned in and kissed her then, soft and slow, like I was savoring the moment. When we pulled apart, she rested her forehead against mine, her breath mingling with mine. "This feels right," she said softly. "Like we're in the place we were always meant to be." I couldn't agree more. I didn't know what the future would hold, but I knew that whatever it was, we were ready for it. Together. That night, as we lay in bed, I couldn't help but think about how far we'd come in such a short time. It had only been a few weeks since that awkward blind date, but it felt like I'd known Sophie forever. And now, we were starting this new chapter together, not knowing exactly what was ahead, but feeling more ready for it than ever. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of Sophie humming in the kitchen. I smiled to myself, feeling something settle deep inside me. This was where I was supposed to be, with her, and I wasn't going anywhere. The weeks that followed Sophie's return to Denver were the kind of weeks that felt like they were full of small, perfect moments. The kind of moments you never expect to mean as much as they do. We settled into a rhythm, seeing each other regularly, doing normal things, but everything felt different. It was like I was falling in love with her all over again, and every new day spent with her just confirmed that this was exactly where I was supposed to be. Sophie and I spent weekends together hiking, trying out new restaurants, and spending lazy Sundays with Copper curled up beside us. It was easy, comfortable, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like nothing was missing. I could see us building something real, something lasting, but there were still moments of uncertainty. Sophie's family back in Wyoming still needed her, and I could see how torn she felt. She loved Denver, but she also loved the place where she grew up, the land that had shaped her. I knew that balancing both worlds wasn't going to be simple, but we talked about it, and each time we did, I reassured her that whatever she decided, I would be there. I wasn't going anywhere. One Saturday afternoon, we were sitting on her balcony, the soft hum of the city below us, the sun setting behind the mountains. Sophie had her legs tucked up underneath her, a cup of coffee in her hands. I could tell she had something on her mind, and I could see the way she kept glancing at me, like she was trying to find the right words. "What's on your mind?" I asked, my voice low, hoping to make it easier for her to talk. She took a deep breath, looking out at the skyline before meeting my gaze. "I've been thinking a lot about my future, about what comes next." I could tell this wasn't just about us. "What do you mean?" I asked gently, squeezing her hand. She paused for a moment, her eyes focused on the city below. "I think I need to find a way to make it all work. To be here with you, but also be there for my family. It's not easy, but I can't let go of either. I've realized I don't have to choose, not really. I can have both." Her words hit me hard, but in the best way. She wasn't running away from the challenges. She was facing them head on, and that's what made her so strong. I admired her for it. "I believe you can," I said quietly, taking her hand in both of mine. "You're the strongest person I know. And I'm here, Sophie. I'll help you figure it out." She smiled, a small, soft smile, but it said everything I needed to hear. It was the smile of someone who had found something real, something worth fighting for. As the months passed, Sophie's life began to settle into a new balance. She found ways to be there for her family while still living her life in Denver. It wasn't always easy, but we made it work. I visited her in Wyoming a couple of times, and she came back to Denver every weekend she could. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And I was learning that sometimes things don't need to be perfect to be worth it. One evening, a few months later, I found myself driving home from work, my mind on the usual, what I'd have for dinner, how the Chevy was coming along, the usual stuff. But as I pulled into the parking lot of Sophie's apartment, something caught my eye. Her car was parked outside, but there was a strange tension in the air, a feeling of anticipation. I walked inside, calling out to her as I opened the door. "Sophie?" "Back here," she called, and I followed her voice to the kitchen. When I stepped inside, I stopped dead in my tracks. Sophie was standing there, holding a small velvet box in her hands. Her eyes were soft, but there was a determination in them, something that told me this moment was more significant than anything we'd ever shared before. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice steady but full of emotion, "about everything we've been through, about how we've made it work. And I don't want to wait anymore. I want us to take the next step, together." She opened the box, and inside was a simple, beautiful ring, a small diamond set in a delicate band. My heart skipped a beat. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Jake," she said, her eyes never leaving mine. "Will you marry me?" My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't expected this, not in a million years. But looking at her, seeing the love and sincerity in her eyes, I knew the answer without even having to think about it. I smiled, my voice thick with emotion. Yes, yes, I will. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she closed the distance between us, wrapping her arms around me in the tightest hug. I love you, she whispered, and I kissed her then, deep and slow, tasting the sweetness of this moment. I love you too, I replied, holding her close, and I always will. We stood there for a long moment, just holding each other, knowing that this was it. We had made it. We had found each other, against all odds, and we were going to face the future together. No matter what came next, we would be ready for it. Together. And as I looked at Sophie, my fiancée, I knew that this wasn't just the end of our story. It was just the beginning.